Okay, so welcome Sally and Yad to the Zoom room again. So we were talking about peak experiences and what a peak experience is, and can you have peak experiences regularly? And I was saying, yeah, well, if you can upgrade your base state, so basically you're happy and in a state of flow. And that becomes your new default, your new norm. Now the peak experience might look like, oh, that was a proper revelation. Time and space just disappeared. So you're opening yourself up to these moments of ecstasy, really. If you remember in the masterclass, if you've done the masterclass, talked about ecstatic well-being. Well, that's really what a peak experience is. Maybe next time I do it, I'll frame it differently. I'll call it a peak experience. So you can have those moments actually throughout your day. The idea of it being once in a lifetime. Why can't you connect into that field frequently? And I think that's the idea behind the practice. Regularly, daily, hourly, practicing with these lessons is you invite that experience more and more in those times, in the 5 minutes. From my own experience, in a few minutes, maybe even a few seconds, I can really just, using the lesson, I can just kind of go in and connect with something and really feel this kind of expansive joy feeling. It just kind of comes over me. So that's like a little glimpse. It's a little peak experience for those, whatever, few moments. It's like connecting back into source. You have the peak experience and it kind of resets your energy. And then you carry on in your day, and maybe you've dropped down from the peak of, really feeling that deep connection and joy. But there's an underlying kind of peace going on. It's kind of like flowing through life, and you're in that peaceful flow state, ready for the next peak experience. So you can actually orchestrate them. I think that's what mind training is about. Consciously training your mind to orchestrate more and more peak experiences. You don't know exactly how they're going to look and when they're coming, but I think you're creating a field in your mind, in your energy, that's open to that. So you're much more likely for peak experiences to happen. And another word for peak experience is grace. By grace, I'm released. It's all just terminology, words, pointers, signposts. Eckhart Tolle calls them to the truth, to something that's really beyond words. How do you actually put an experience into words? Not that easy. Words can the best tool we have, but in the end, it's pure experience. So the language just helps us kind of frame it, understand it, maybe explain it to a point, open our minds to it. That's the use of language, to the actual experience. The actual experience is not in the words. The words just describe it, point to it, facilitate it. But they can do that quite well, which is why we use them as a tool to facilitate them. Yeah, so interesting. I wanted to bring that point about because a lot of people know Maslow's hierarchy, but it's a very dumbed down version of it. The five level. That's what most people know. Oh, yeah, Maslow's hierarchy. Yeah, but actually, there's an expanded version that people don't know about, which is interesting. So why didn't the expanded version get taught? Oh, this is his model too. So of course, let's get that out. But people have got. I think they still teach the basic model, and don't really focus on the expanded one because the expanded one's a bit scary. That's why. He's talking about transcendent states, transpersonal psychology. Okay, so what does that mean? I go beyond myself into peak experiences, mystic experiences. Goes into the so-called woo-woo domain of the mystical. And I think that frightens some people. So then they prefer to stick with, or self-actualization. That fits quite nicely with the whole personal growth mindset, doesn't it? I'm going to become a self-actualized person. I have a sense of, greater esteem and doing stuff, but you still think you're a separate self. That's what Maslow saw. You still think you haven't really transcended the self. You're kind of optimizing. You're getting in the self-actualization model. You can try and optimize what is a false thought system. You can try and optimize a separate self and go, oh well, I'm a bigger, more powerful, wealthier, funnier, more socially rounded, whatever self, and I've grown, and the self is like expanded, but you haven't really transcended that self. At the highest level of his model, you transcend that self. There's no self left, because he understood, the deep spiritual teachings, and saying, well, that's what we're here to do. And he framed it in psychological terms. So shall we? That leads us quite nicely into the reading for today. So shall we have a look at the quote, and then some of the, quite a lot actually. When I was doing it, I was like, this is going on. This email's going on, on and on. I was like, can I finish it? But anyway, eventually we got there. It's an amalgamation of some previous stuff, and then I put it together in different ways. So anyway, I hope it was useful. Okay, so Sally, do you want to read for us that quote, please?
Okay. We fear our highest possibilities. We are generally afraid to become that which we can glimpse in our most perfect moments under conditions of great courage. We enjoy and even thrill to godlike possibilities we see in ourselves in such peak moments. And yet we simultaneously shiver with weakness, awe, and fear before these very same possibilities. Oh, that's where my oh right, okay, yeah. I did this release statement this morning with my group, and it all flowed out really well, and it's practically using most of those words. So that's where that came from after reading yours.
Okay. Yeah, great quote. Almost the other quote that came to mind was similar, was Marianne Williamson's. Our deepest fear is not that we're inadequate; it's that we're powerful beyond measure. These godlike possibilities in these peak moments, and yet the ego is scared of it. We're really claiming your true power, awe and fear before these very same possibilities. Because who am I to have these experiences? Just little old me. Your victim identity has to be cast off when you have that. Perfect. So that's why it's an opening into the spiritual dimension. So let's see what we'll just have a little chat about Abraham Maslow and his models, and how this all ties in with Course in Miracles, shall we? So if you want to can you read on your tablet? You said you might not be able to. See out there?
Sorry, I hadn't muted myself. Can you make it a wee bit bigger, please?
A wee bit? Oh, wow.
A wee bit.
We're all getting very Scottish, aren't we?
Yeah. We decided a wee was 25%, by the way.
Yeah. So I thought I'd just
definition of wee.
Seeing as you're in Scotland.
Yeah, okay. Great. A wee bit. Yeah.
Okay, today's inspirational quote is by Abraham Maslow, an American psychologist known as the father of humanist psychology and famous for formulating a 5-tier hierarchy of needs that puts basic physiological needs like food, water, and sleep at the base of the pyramid of needs, and the need to self-actualize at the top of the pyramid, as illustrated in the diagram below.
Okay, so there we go. That's Maslow's famous hierarchy, which most people know. They go, oh yeah, physiological. Kind of makes sense, doesn't it? You've got, your base needs at the bottom, and then Once those are met, you've got some safety needs, personal security, employment, resources, health, property. These are the sort of needs that probably the majority of people as you are focused on meeting. And if you don't have them met, then a great deal of your time and energy is directed towards those. And then love and belonging, friendship, intimacy, family. That's now talking more about mental, emotional needs, need for esteem, respect, self-esteem, status, recognition, strength, freedom. So we're still talking a lot about the ego there, but there's a hint of something else. Freedom. What does freedom actually mean? That's pointing you beyond the ego. And self-actualization, a desire to become the most that one can be, which is quite interesting, because actually, although the ego will say, well, the most that I can be is, wealthy and famous and whatever definition it has in this world, that points you beyond. So self-actualization then opens you up to the higher states that Maslow then framed in his second version of the model, because he realized that this wasn't the ultimate. The most that you can be is actually not yourself. That's the interesting thing. Not a limited, separate self. It was quite interesting yesterday because I was talking to some people and they weren't that familiar with this. I was looking at the expressions on their face. I'm going, so you're not a body. This isn't really you. And they were just like looking like really with attention, but like kind of jaw dropping, going, not really getting that. But how can you say it's not real? Here it is. And one woman said, well, we're birthing, we give birth to children. I said, yeah, what a dream that is. My goodness, like what level we've gone to make the body real. One body produces other bodies. What a mind trip that is. But it's all mind. It's all a miscreation of mind. I think it takes some time to get this, because you're going beyond the normal, going out of the normal domain of even self-actualization, actualizing a separate self and the body that self thinks it has, and going into transcendence.
I had to do that lesson for months. I'm not a body. I just got stuck on that one for ages. I know it's a long one anyway, but I stayed on it a long time until it sunk in properly. But yeah, I can imagine the first time you tell someone that is like, is he all right?
Yeah. One woman was like, I just can't get my head around that. I was like, see, she was trying. It's good on her. She was really looking at it and going, oh, okay, maybe. And she was paying attention, but it was like, I just can't get my head around that idea that I'm not a body. How can this not be real? I mean, I can see it, feel it, touch it. It seems to be so real. And yet, I said, well, the scientists will tell you it's not real. Quantum mechanics is, there's no reality in the absence of observation. It's all perceptual. It's all in your mind. It would not exist without the observer. So what does that mean then? How real is it if it doesn't exist without the observer? Calls everything into question. So Maslow would have understood all this and then framed this in his second version of the model, where he put expanded 8-level hierarchy of needs. And then interesting, he framed it as deficiency needs. So the first 4, I'm trying to meet a lack, apparent lack in me, and the other 4, growth needs. Okay, I feel the need for cognitive stimulation, intellectual stimulation, aesthetic. I need beauty. I need some art, culture. These kinds of things come in. Self-actualization. Well, can I be the best I can be? And then at the limit of that, you go, well, the best I can be is not me, as I previously defined me. The best I can be is infinite, pure, formless awareness. That's the best I can be. So then you transcend the self into the pure formless awareness, perfect love that you really are. So that's at the top of the pyramid. And when you have a peak experience, you could put that into that top capstone of the pyramid, because the peak experience helps you in that moment to transcend everything, and you open yourself to this transcendent dimension as a felt experience. That's what the peak experience is. And one moment of that can really absolutely change your life. Speak from personal experience. I've had, I'd say one or two moments really deep where you just go, oh wow, I just get it. I see experientially. And maybe that's why I say it, like, it's so simple, because when you had an experience like that, you go, oh, of course, it's all revealed. It's so obvious experientially. But if you haven't had that experience, then it can remain obscure because you haven't experienced it. So then I just say, well, keep practicing until you do, because it's waiting for you. This power, the spirit wants you to awaken, is going to be there guiding you, to help you to go up this pyramid and have these transcendent experiences. It wants you to have them, to bless you with them, to awaken you to the truth, because it's through those experiences. Kind of first and foremost, you can do the mind training, so that's important. And so conscious, directed, intentional mind training. But that is opening your mind to experiences that are transcendent, that you can't plan, that just will happen. And so that's what Yeshua understands in his course. He's saying, okay, well, let's work with the conscious, intentional, because that's what you know and you understand, and you can consciously do that. And then if you keep doing that, no doubt you're going to open yourself up to the transcendent peak experience, which he calls grace or revelation. That will come in time when you're ready. When you've opened your mind enough, then these experiences can just happen. But they didn't just happen. Mine happened after 9 days of intensive meditation, silent meditation. So there was a lot of conscious willing. Okay, I'm going to do this. I've got to go to the retreat. You've got to sit in meditation to then happen, where there's a total letting go. So it's kind of a paradox, isn't it? Whole lot of mind training, discipline, work, and then boom, you open up into an experience where the truth of the words "I need do nothing," that's absolutely true in that moment. In that moment, you don't need to do anything. But in order to allow that moment to happen, I needed to do a whole lot. So that's the paradox of spiritual awakening. We need do nothing ultimately, but to open ourselves up to that experience, there's a lot of work, spiritual work, needs to be done to overcome our ego's blocks. Okay, so any thoughts on that? Questions, comments?
When I had my experience, I was looking at the apple tree next door, and then I looked at this apple and suddenly became at one, realizing that I'm the apple and that it's all in me. That came after, I can't remember how many days of transcendental meditation when I was on a course. So yes, it's like I wasn't aiming to transcend, but because of a result of it. And a bit like you, really, because I came out of the course, I was online, and I thought, oh, this is so intense. I just need to go outside and lie on my hammock. And it was as I laid on the hammock, because it's the letting go, isn't it? At that point, I let go of the course, let go of trying to understand it. Moment.
Yeah, exactly. It's when you fully let go, and then it just happens. But often, in order to do that, you need to have done the kind of the hard yards. That's exactly what happened to the Buddha. So lots of effort, a huge effort, and the man was like nearly killing himself trying to find enlightenment. 7 years into this, and he's like starved to death, and he's emaciated, and he can barely move because he's so weak. And then he just gives up. I think at a point he's just like, okay, I'm just so, and he just lets go of the striving, and then he gets it. But he only gets it because he's taken it to that point. He's done so much practice and work, striving. But then that's prepared him for this moment where he just, okay, total let go. And he goes, there it is. What I've been looking for reveals itself when I stop looking. That's the paradox of it, isn't it? Although I had to kind of look and strive to prepare myself, it's like, finally I realized it was always there. But it's elusive, and I'd say unless you're consciously doing mind training, that experience could remain elusive. You never know. Eckhart Tolle just happened. He had a mystic experience. He said, I'd done no spiritual work preparation. It was just I was so deeply miserable. But that's what did it. It just cracked my ego open. So that's one way. That's the way of the cross I talk about. But the way of mastery is I'm going to consciously, intentionally do spiritual practices in order to open myself up to this, and allow it, create a field where there's a maximum possibility for peak experiences, mystic experiences, transcendence to happen. So this is just another pointer. I thought it was useful to talk about Maslow. It's a well-known psychological need, psychological hierarchy model. And most people don't know about the higher needs he postulates: cognitive, aesthetic, self-actualization, and then transcendence. And the peak experience fits into the transcendent category. Mystic experience, which was what he maintained they were, as we'll see. Okay, so Sally, if you can read the next paragraph for us.
As part of the transcendence level at the top of this expanded pyramid, he identified what he called peak experiences. His research showed him that often such experiences lasted only a few moments, but nevertheless left an indelible mark on the person, and often became the defining moment of their lives that inspired all their subsequent words and actions. He also found that these experiences were characterized by transcendent states of love, peace, joy, and even bliss. All right. I wanted a double portion of peace there.
Wow. Well, it's interesting you say that, because there's another lady who's just joined the program whose surname is Peace. We have two peace warriors.
Double peace. That's what I like to hear.
Double peace. Yeah.
So even bliss. So initially he called them what many spiritual traditions have called such experiences down the ages, mystical experiences. But this terminology didn't go down too well with the psychological academia of the day, who were more interested in the specific, definable, and concrete than the abstract, indefinable, and mysterious. And so in the end, he just called them peak experiences.
Yeah, just again, understanding, like, why do we translate? Why do we change names? Because it's more accessible for people. So I think he said, okay, well, I'll call it a peak experience because it's going to be more accessible to people than the mystic experience. But it's the same thing, just a different pointer. This often became the defining moment of their lives, this peak experience. That seems to be, quite a common theme. One moment can absolutely change that person, and then from there, that they change their life. Their lives changed in that moment. Whole trajectory, direction from one experience. That's how powerful a peak experience is. Okay, so he maintained to the end of his life there really was no difference between what he termed a peak experience and a mystical experience, such as the one Yeshua I described yesterday. Yeshua had in the desert, with these those three challenges. he had to undergo like 40 days of fasting. That would have been a mystical experience for him, but then completely changed the trajectory of his life. He couldn't go back into his old life and carry on being a carpenter. He had to take up his ministry and start teaching the truth. Okay, so if you want to read the next one, this resistance.
This resistance to the mystical and unexplainable is our ego's fear of the unknown that Maslow mentions in the quote. So while we yearn for something more than what philosopher Ken Wilber calls flatland, the world of mediocrity and spiritual blindness to our true magnificence, and can experience brief, thrilling moments of a transcendent reality and self. When we've expanded or peak experience, we often slip back into fearing the same experience that we yearn for because it threatens our ego's sense of separate identity. Is that my speaker crackling?
No, there's some rain going on, I think.
Okay.
That's what that is. Rain on the ceiling. It's Scotland. Hey, it's rain. It's been interesting to observe the difference in temperature. It's like 10 degrees colder.
Yeah, I was stunned yesterday. I saw Lucy on the call yesterday. She was wearing a woolly hat. And I was here, I'm sitting here in 27 degrees sweating. I thought, oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's like a different country. Much cooler temperatures. We were sitting out in the garden on Tuesday night. And it was, I wouldn't say it was freezing, but it was like, 17, 18 degrees. Everyone was sitting out with like coats, and it's windy and blustery and a fire's going. That's Scotland for you, I guess. But very warm, a very warm welcome from people. There's definitely a spiritual openness and willingness to listen to the message. So it's been amazing.
Well, you're like a traveling teacher. You're like Jesus. You're traveling around with the message. So people are going to welcome you in because they want to hang out with you and see what you've got. I guess
so, yeah. And they say, prophet, you leave your own domain, and then people are sort of saying it would never have happened in South Africa. This kind of response, pretty much anywhere to get a group of 15, 20 people together interested in A Course in Miracles, that's quite a big deal. No, there just aren't that many. Maybe in the major, but in my hometown, okay, there's probably that number. But it's just Jono. He's been around for years, been running stuff. So why are we going to bother? That's the sort of So it's been interesting as well. Okay, so have we read This Resistance, the Mystical and Unexplained? Yeah, we've read that. So any thoughts on that? Ken Wilber, Flatland, we've talked about that idea before. So a bit of explanation on that.
I'm not familiar. Yeah.
So let me just go on here. We'll go into our trusty manual. So Ken Wilber's a very learned man who's created a theory of everything. He wants to create a model, which he called the integral model, that would kind of frame every religion, every philosophy, different thought systems, science, religion, culture, into kind of one model that could explain it all. Theory of everything. And came up with this. This is the basis of it. A very simple model, actually. Individual and a collective dimension to life. So one axis, the y-axis, the x-axis is the interior and the exterior. So where those intersect, you have these different quadrants. So individual interior is your inner self, thoughts, emotions, values, priorities, motivations, and so on. That's all intangible. And then that gets externalized in behavior. So that's observed behaviors, performance outcomes. On a collective level, you have culture. So that's collective thoughts. What are a group of people thinking, feeling? What do they value? What's their purpose, their priorities, their motivations, and so on, as a group. And then that gets expressed in patterns of behavior, which you call systems. So that's organizational structures and processes and tools and this kind of thing, what we can observe. And so Flatland, he called a perception of the world where you believe that only the exterior is real. So only the exterior dimension is reality. So there's no internal domain. These things seem to have their own causation. How they quite explain how these things arise doesn't really make sense. Kind of a disconnected model. Oh, well, behavior just arises. And there's, at the extreme of Flatland, there's not even acknowledgement that we have a mind. The Flatland scientific materialist worldview says you are a brain. You're a brain and a body, and your consciousness comes from the activity of your brain. And when your brain dies, then there's no more consciousness. So completely inverted from the truth, because the truth is that consciousness, mind, has created the brain and the body. What else would have created it? How did it come about? The scientific materialist worldview can't explain how this all came about then, why it all came about. So it's a very disconnected model that actually doesn't make any sense, because it can't explain the source, it can't explain causation, really. But yet it's still probably the dominant worldview of most people. And a lot of the intellectual intelligentsia of our society are scientific materialists who go, oh, no, we've got the truth. But science doesn't really know what to do with consciousness. Kind of doesn't figure in the scientific materialist model. It comes into quantum mechanics, which is where science starts to get very interesting. Science and spirituality merge, because you realize that there's no reality, external reality, in the absence of observation. So the observer, which gives rise to a mind and awareness, is fundamental to the exterior. There's an integral link. So that's what quantum mechanics is saying. Which is why it's a path to awakening. It was a lady yesterday in the group who did the talk, who through science, she was a scientist, had really started to wake up and say, okay, well, what is quantum mechanics saying? She worked at CERN. She wanted to figure this all out. And that was her one of her paths to awakening. So that's what Flatland is, the worldview that only the external is real, only what you can see, feel, taste, touch, measure is reality. And there's no attempt to try and even talk about these domains. You can't ask a Flatlander to talk about mind and talk about the inner world, because they don't even believe it exists. So it's a great ego defense, because the ego is saying that the mind that is actually causative of all of this doesn't even exist. Only the body, only the projection of the mind exists. So if you can never get back into your mind, how can you ever change your mind? You see the defense mechanism. So if people really fixate on believing they're a body, that's the scientific materialist worldview. Not wanting to acknowledge, yes, I have a mind, and mind must be primary and causative. Mind causes all my behavior. Mind causes my performance outcomes. Well, isn't that obvious? One would think it's obvious, but in an upside down thought system, it's not obvious. It's been denied. So that's what Flatland means, just so you know. A perception of the world is only being on the level of the external. So only the exterior is real, and the other quadrants, these two quadrants, don't exist. That's the Flatland worldview at its extreme. Scientific materialism. Okay, so where are we? So once again, it comes down to choice. It's Yad. Yad, can you read for us?
Once again, it comes down to choice. We must choose to invite this expanded or peak experience into our awareness and let go of the fear that blocks it, keeps us stuck in experiencing only this flat land level of form. So carry on.
So we can choose. Yeah. We can choose to invite this, and you invite this by doing consciously, by doing spiritual practices. But Yeshua goes on. Yeah, carry on. This is quite a good point to make.
How can I consciously invite mystic or peak experiences into my life? You may well ask. Yeshua gives a simple answer to this question in the Course in Miracles by telling us that you're still convinced that your understanding is a powerful contribution to the truth and makes it what it is. Yet we have emphasized that you need understand nothing. Salvation is easy just because it asks nothing you cannot give right now. It's comforting.
Oh. So saying you actually, what he's pointing to here is a peak experience, isn't it? Don't try and intellectually understand it. This is still egoic, and your understanding is a powerful contribution to the truth. He's saying no, it's not. The truth is true, whether you understand it or not. There's nothing you cannot give right now. So right now you can open yourself to a transcendent mystic experience, which shows you the truth experientially.
I had an interesting experience this morning. I was practicing, I don't know if you've come across it, allowing someone else to feel yourself. So like I was feeling the tree down the bottom of the garden, then I allowed the tree to feel me. I was aware, no, how was it? I could feel the tree feeling me. I felt the tree, then I could feel the tree feeling me. And then I slipped into the oneness of it. So I was connected with everything. It was just beautiful. I had all this lovely energy around my heart and chest and everything. And then, just lost, kind of just dissolved into it all. So I was wondering if normally I don't allow, I feel other beings, but I wasn't allowing others to feel me. And then when I felt others feeling me, I became the oneness. So I just found that very interesting. Don't know quite what happened. Does that make sense at all?
Yeah, it does. So
that's how we keep ourselves separate. That's how we keep ourselves separate then, isn't it? We don't allow the joining of each of us.
Yeah. No, there's no private thoughts. So a lot of people are like, oh, I don't want to let anyone else in because I've got thoughts that I wouldn't want to share with anyone. I'm hiding. So I keep myself closed off. To open yourself, like you said, it didn't really matter what it was. It was a tree in your case. But you're saying I'm willing to open my mind completely and not be a separate self. So there's no private thoughts. It can feel me totally. That's allowing apparently something other to come in and experience your experience. It means there's no private thought. It means, well, there's not really a separate self. The tree can feel me and I can feel the tree. Then logically, we must be one. There must be one awareness, really. So all these exercises are about breaking down the mental and emotional barriers to oneness and allowing ourselves to experience it. Surrendering into that oneness. So that's why we do spiritual practice. It's all exercise. It's training to open your mind to that experience where you do nothing. When you're in the oneness, it's like nothing you need to do. Just experience it. It's pure beingness, pure experience. But there was an exercise. You consciously sat down and gone, okay, so let me do this. Let me allow that, and that then opens you up to the a mystic experience. That's what it was, a mystic experience. Feel oneness. You're going beyond the ego, and you're going into this transcendent. It was a transcendent experience because you penetrating through the veil of separation. You no longer see the tree as separate from you. You realize it's just one. It's one awareness that's seemingly manifesting separate forms, but that's not the truth. It's really only one awareness.
Feels permanent as well. It feels like not something I switch on and off. It feels like I'll always be at one with the tree,
Oh,
playing around with it. And I thought, wow, this is interesting. Where's this heading?
oh. Well, it's heading to your ultimate enlightenment. This is the truth. How can I be disconnected from true awareness? It's not possible. This is the foundational awareness.
Yeah, so it's always there, isn't it? It's just that I tap into it.
The only awareness that's absolutely true and has never changed. And how can I ever disconnect? No. And so your experience, this is why he's saying go beyond intellectual understanding. It's an experience, ultimately, of that awareness.
Yeah, and then it led me to think about relationships. When you're in a seemingly special relationship, I presume in the past I've not allowed that person to fully feel me and become one, or else it wouldn't be a special one, would it? It would be holy. But that astounds me that I can get to this age, get to 60 years old and have not allowed somebody to fully feel me. That, I understood I could feel you, but I don't let you feel me. And I think, why have I not clocked that before?
Yeah, it's a really interesting point you make, because it's got to be two-way. Communication is two-way, and that's when they say you've got to be vulnerable to have unconditional love. You've got to be vulnerable. I think this is what it means. Really open yourself up to someone else sharing your most intimate thoughts. And if you're defending, if you're ashamed of those thoughts, you're never going to do that, are you? So you have to have cleaned out your own mental and emotional cupboard, so to speak, of all the rot and the mold and whatever, because otherwise you're not going to be willing to open it up. So often a lot of spiritual work, and then you start being able to go, okay, yes, I can actually open it. I'm starting to appreciate that I'm actually innocent, and that what's inside there is actually beautiful, and someone would actually really appreciate the experience of sharing that. But if you're ashamed and you've still got all the guilt and sin ideas that you're going to defend, aren't you? Psychologically, no, I don't want to let anyone in because I can't possibly share this. It's really ugly in there, dark. So it kind of happens. I think the holy relationship happens when you've done a lot of other work, or spiritual work on yourself, opening up, clearing, letting go. Yeshua calls it the most phenomenal teaching accomplishment. Maybe we translate it as phenomenal learning accomplishment, because it's so hard to really open up like that, be completely vulnerable and say, okay, come in and feel me completely. Know what I'm thinking, feeling. No private thoughts. No, I have no private thoughts at all. It's just I am pure formless awareness, and so are you. So we share that. It's quite an advanced stage you have to have reached in your own development, letting go of the ego.
It's interesting because I feel like I could do that with you and I could do it with Yad, but could I just do it with another person that's not done their work? It feels like there's a fear in me that I end up taking on their stuff.
Yeah, but there's what's that fear? It's still a belief in separation, isn't it? Really, if you look at it honestly.
Definitely.
Like, oh, okay,
yeah,
so
no.
this person is separate.
Yeah, their stuff is my stuff. Yeah. No, I get that. Yeah. All right, it's just dropped in.
Because then if we're all one, then they must be that awareness too. However, on the level of form, you would probably need to exercise some discernment for that. You wouldn't just go open up on the internet to anyone. So there's a practical, like, okay, let's just we do this mentally, emotionally, and but having a safe space like this, allows these kinds of sharings to happen, and then you do that with people who you feel comfortable with, and not going to use and abuse the information. But still, okay, well, there's a little bit of discernment. That's still actually a knowledge of separation, isn't it?
Mm.
How it goes in this world. It's like,
it's interesting you should say that. Oh, we've got someone at the door.
Yeah, I haven't met that person, so I'm not sure who they are. Or maybe he was pointing to my hostess. Let's say hello to Joni. Hi, Joni. I think someone was looking for you.
Sorry.
There was a man knocking on the door.
Man.
Okay.
I'm just going to see him.
All right. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome to join us, by the way.
Oh, it's okay.
You'd like to.
I need to rest. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
So can I just question that then? So you're talking about being discerning about who we open up to, and yet you're live streaming this on to YouTube, aren't you? So anybody could see this, and we're opening up to anybody.
No, I hope so. Yeah. So there is an openness to say, okay, I'm not hiding anything. My stuff is typically we don't the sharing part. If you're sharing something personal, then I don't live stream it, because that's just okay.
No, but whilst we're talking about things, then we forget that we're on live stream and we don't necessarily bring personal stuff in. But everything we're talking about is personal, because we're talking about our personal experiences, aren't we?
Yeah, but in the end, like, how else do you, if you're going to be authentic in this journey? I mean, it comes down to your personal experience. If you're not willing to talk about that, then which you're just going to talk dry theory. Oh, well, conceptually, this is how I think it is. I mean, that's not really going to touch anyone. That's not going to really help anyone. So it's about saying, well, I go beyond that need for private thoughts and protection, and because my experience is everyone's experience. If people can learn through my experience, then great.
So do we have to have that discernment in other places? Because if we haven't got it here and we're just open, then do we need to have that discernment wherever we go?
Well, this is a safe space. The people who join here are on a path, and there's a level of respect, and someone's not just going to abuse what's been said. If you went into another environment, if people are in the ego's thought system, and you start sharing with people and really opening up, they might use that against you, depending on who they are. It's possible. So I think just have some discernment as to who you share with. They talk about your tribe or your network, your community, and that's why this kind of space is valuable, because you can open up, you can feel safe. Ultimately, it shouldn't really matter, should it? I think a true master, well, I'll open up to anyone. I can connect with anyone, and I can share with anyone. There's no fear, because if I'm really rooted in my own true awareness, pure formless awareness of perfect love, there's nothing that can really touch that and affect that. So I don't need to defend, in any way, shape or form. But it's a journey of really trusting, a development of trust. Interesting. We talked about that the other day. The development of trust is the how the more your trust is, the more advanced you can become on the spiritual journey. So you start to really trust the spirit in all instances, and if you're really trusting that, and it gives you guidance to do something or not do something, and abused mentally or emotionally, would it? So it'd be like, okay, well, just don't do that. You don't have to fear. I think this is the thing. People say, well, if I don't fear, then what's going to keep me safe? But if you're really tapping into the guidance, and the spirit will just tell you, so do that, don't do that, don't go there. So You need to discern, okay, so what's genuine intuition? What's my own fear, my own anxiety coming up, which isn't rational, that needs to be undone. There might be an instance where you just go, no, don't do that. Don't go there, don't. And that's like an intuition. It's saying, well, that's just gonna protect you, prevent a bad experience from happening. Because you listened. There wasn't really fear required. It was just like guidance. Don't do that. Do that. So we want to get so clear. There's just like guidance. Okay, go there, do that. Don't do that. And that, that keeps us in the flow, and it keeps us safe. Because the Spirit doesn't want you to suffer. So I think that's the way. Just really open yourself and trust that if you need guidance to keep you, physically, mentally, emotionally safe, you'll get it, but without fear. It just will come and say, okay, don't do that then. And that's okay. It requires a high level of discernment, and to do it without any fear, that's really the key. It's like, well, am I actually fearing, or is it just a direct download? Don't do that. Go there. Do this. At the highest level, it seems like it is possible just to listen directly to guidance. It's like the sat nav in your computer, in your phone, or the car. It gives you, there's no like emotional flavor to the guidance. It's like, do that, go left, turn right. So the Spirit can actually work like that if you've cleared your mind. If you're neutral and you're just like, okay, I'm just going to allow that guidance. Go left. Okay, go left. That's what it's saying. All right, I go left. That's what He's training our minds to do, to get so clear we can just download that guidance, and then it's going to tell us in any moment what we should do without fear. But that guidance is going to keep us safe. Yeshua had experiences before his crucifixion, which was his time. He said, no, like nothing can touch me. My time hasn't come. So no one could lay a hand on him. No one could hurt him. He's just transcended it all. He was above it. There were instances in the Bible where it said, there were crowds and they wanted to stone him. And then it's that instance with the adulteress, they wanted to just defuse it. Another instance, the crowd were getting angry, and he just walked through them. So he just walked through them, and he was just in such a high vibrational state that they couldn't really touch him. So the Spirit would have just guided him, said, say this, do this. Okay, there's a crowd, seems to be tricky, but don't fear, just walk through it, and they'll dissipate. And so it kept him protected and safe. In what was a pretty unsafe, we think our world's unsafe. That was much more unsafe, because at any point they could stone you to death, and that was allowed. So, kind of walking on eggshells, but he didn't fear. And then, the crucifixion was consciously chosen. He was like, okay, I believe he actually orchestrated it by going into the temple and doing what he did with turning up the tables. It was like orchestrate, okay, this needs to happen, so this is what I'll do, and then surrender to the consequences. Not my will, but thy will be done. Okay, so we've done the mystery of grace. This experience is the so-called mystery of grace. Did we read that? I'm not sure. Forgotten, so let's someone read it. Sally or Yad? Through these words?
Okay. Through these words, he's pointing to an experience that is way beyond mere intellectual understanding. This experience is so-called mystery of grace. That is the mystic experience sought by so many spiritual seekers and experienced by truly authentic spiritual teachers of this world, teachers of God in A Course in Miracles terminology. Because how else can you teach authentically but from your own experience? It's worth reminding yourself about the definition of a mystic briefly, which according to the Oxford Language Dictionary is a person who seeks by contemplation and self-surrender to obtain unity with or absorption into the deity or the absolute, or who believes in the spiritual apprehension of truth that are beyond the intellect.
So that's the definition. In other words, a transcendent domain. Someone who believes in the transcendent beyond the intellect.
So when you say there's no private thoughts, what that means to me is that all our ego illusions are just made up stories, and everybody has them because everyone's got the same sort of things going on. And then the downloads or the intuitive flashes and things, everybody can get at any time. So that's in the oneness. So really defending yourself from anyone is ludicrous, isn't it? Keeping anybody out is like, well, keeping what from where from whom? It's bizarre, isn't it?
Well, you're making them into a separate self who can apparently, threaten and attack you. Now, the tricky thing is on the level of form, that seems to be true. Some, people can physically attack you, mentally, verbally, but the highest level, you don't really acknowledge that. So the attack is meaningless. The crucifixion was really showing this thought system that's beyond it at all. So even if they're doing this terrible thing to the body, apparently terrible thing, forgive them, Father, if they don't know what they do. It's just the presence is actually still there. It's unaffected. So, in such an extreme situation, to maintain the connection is, there's a value in that extreme example, because if it can be done in that extremity, then it can be done in less challenging circumstances that present themselves to you all the time. Oh, well, someone's seemingly said something nasty. Okay, well, can I just let it go like Yeshua did? Don't take it personally. Don't react to it. Realize that it's really nothing and surrender to presence. Or am I going to get upset by it and make it real? And again, crucify myself through this experience. So, that was the value of the crucifixion. It was a master teaching in how to let go of whatever the ego can come up with. However bad it seems to be, you can still be defenseless and you can still be innocent. And still surrender into the truth beyond the ego. So it's defined a mystic as going beyond the intellect, going beyond the mind, into an experience through contemplation and self-surrender. So there's a process to this. Contemplation, so meditation, self-surrender, idea that you're going to let go of a separate self and surrender into an experience that transcends that self, hence the model, transcendence. It transcends the idea of a separate self, these experiences. Okay, so next paragraph, grace is the spiritual apprehension, truths that are beyond the intellect, the definition refers to. So it's a state of being that can only be experientially known. This is not something the intellect can take you to. So eventually, the course, Helen Schuckman said, finally a course for intellectuals. Well, that's the start of it. Yeah, there's some intellectual concepts. You need to have probably some intellect to understand it. But in the end, to really understand it, you've got to go beyond the intellect, which is probably her problem. One of her problems was she couldn't really accept the teaching, because I think she couldn't go into the mystic experience. She was too rooted in her logical mind to do that. So that was a block to her awareness of what the course was actually pointing to. So then you might say, well, how can I experience grace? So this grace, spiritual apprehension of truths that are beyond the intellect, is a good question. How can I experience this consistently? Do I have to become a mystic? A lot of people, you think mystic, okay, just hours spent in meditation, someone just meditating all day. That's a traditional kind of understanding. In the East, there are people, maybe in the West, that people still do that, hours and hours of meditation every day. So this is one way. Many spiritual seekers have tried. Ultimately, Yeshua says in the Course, this will succeed because of its purpose, which is in alignment with the truth. Okay, so you really seek the truth. You're going to do it through long hours of meditation. Ultimately, you'll succeed. But Yeshua calls these methods tedious and very time-consuming. All of them look to the future for release from a state of present unworthiness and inadequacy. So I saw this quite interestingly in the Vipassana. I did the Vipassana retreat, and I was just observing how the teacher was and chatting to her, but to understand. And they set up a model where they have to do hours and hours and hours of meditation in order to achieve some kind of enlightenment, some kind of happiness. So 2 hours a day minimum, and then these regular retreats, they encourage you to do like 10-day retreats at least once a year, and then you advance, you do 20 days, 30 days, 60 days. And this is what Yeshua is referring to, tedious, like so much time. And yet after 25 years of doing all of that, she still couldn't really say, I said, is there anything beyond this world? Do you believe in anything else? She says, no, there's nothing else but the impermanent. I was like, wow, 25 years and you still haven't penetrated beyond the illusion. Still just seeing everything's anicca, they call it in Buddhism, impermanent. So that's the level of illusion. But that's only a necessary realization to see that, to go beyond it, to go into the transcendent. So I saw firsthand, that maybe isn't the quickest way. Spending hours and hours just doing this one meditation practice can be tedious, time-consuming, and actually become a dead end, because she was stuck in the belief that there's nothing beyond it. There's no transcendent awareness that transcends the illusion of the changeable, what's always changing on the level of form. So he's giving us a better alternative with the Course. So he doesn't leave us here. Instead gives us a better alternative. So, do you want to read that quote for us?
Sorry. Can you hear me?
Well.
Yeah. Your way will be different, not in purpose, but in means. A holy relationship is a means of saving time. One instant spent together with your brother restores the universe to both of you. You are prepared. Now you need but to remember you need do nothing.
It's kind of referring to what we talked about. The holy instant is where you connect with your brother. One instant spent together with your brother. So where you merge your mind, you realize there's no separation. Restores the universe to both of you. He's talking about not the physical universe, the universe of truth. Oneness. Now you need but to remember, you need do nothing. So in these connections, you connect with another person, you can use a tree as you did. In that, there's a dropping away of the illusion of separation. And now you need do nothing. You're just in the experience of oneness. So he's telling us that holy relationships are the fast track to grace, connecting the idea of grace, the holy instant, these mystical experiences with a relationship, where you can experience that oneness, the breaking down of the ego barriers. You connect to the person or the tree, whatever the other object, the other perceived entity is. Doesn't really matter, because you're using that to correct your belief in separation and experience oneness. So this is the fast track to grace. Just experience the oneness in every instant, with every person, every entity that you perceive. It's going to save a lot of time. And ultimately, we need do nothing. If you experience that oneness, the unity consciousness, that's the samadhi, they call it in the Eastern teaching. Samadhi is the highest level of the yogic tradition. as an experience. It's no longer a practice or a process. It's the actual experience of unity. Literally means the sameness of everything. Everything's the same. Underlying everything I see is just one awareness, the very source of life. It's my awareness, it's other people's awareness, it's the tree's awareness. And I have that experientially. That's now knowledge, because I know it experientially as a felt experience, which is the mystic experience, if you experience that. So why couldn't you walk around in that state? It's possible. If you really open your mind, you walk around always in that connected state. So every person, every living creature, you feel that connection with. You're not disconnected from them anymore. And that seems to be the universal experience of enlightened beings. They talk about this unity consciousness, walking in it. I walk with God, perceive everything in love, see that I am everything, and everything's me. That's unconditional love. Namaste, I see you. So that's where this is all directing. And yes, you're saying that the quickest way to this is to engage in transforming your relationships from special ones, where you think you separate private thoughts, all of that goes with it. I need to defend myself. To like, okay, I'm open to sharing with this other person. So there's they talk about being vulnerable. This is the key. Well, because you have to let them in, don't you? You can't shut yourself off and have private thoughts and create mental and emotional barriers. You have to let them in. Say, okay, well, you experience me and I experience you, because we're one. So it's actually one experience. It's one mind sharing the experience of itself with itself. That's what the holy relationship really is. Which then breaks down all the egoic barriers, and we just experience the oneness. He's saying, well, this is the quickest way. And I've had a couple really, I suppose, mystic experiences with in relationships. So I'm with, the first was with my girlfriend, the second was with my wife, and I'm just looking at them, and there's such a deep connection. So when you just, I don't know if you've ever had that, you do eye gazing, and it just, wow, the energy is so powerful, the unity, that it leads to like a kundalini rising experience. It's like this just energy, just flood of energy rises up. It's so powerful that I can't maintain consciousness. I just passed out. It's like, gone, man down. Very interesting. It happened twice. Just from that experience of energetically feeling, connecting, like feeling of oneness, which is like, wow. So can be very, very powerful. A powerful opening into a transcendent dimension and a mystic experience, or grace, as he calls it. Okay, so where are we? Holy relations with the fast track to grace, or peak experiences. Yeah. So in these moments where you connect with another person, and you experience that grace, that oneness, you're saving yourself a lot of time, because to experience a concept, it's a felt experience.
So the holy relationships, they're like your partner or your girlfriend, like you said, they're not your family.
No, every relationship can be a holy relationship. That's the whole point.
Okay.
There's nothing that's really excluded. Typically, I'll talk about the special versus the holy relationship. So your special relationship, as the ego defines them, is with these special people in your life. Your partner, that's very special because you've selected your partner. Family, you didn't select consciously anyway. But they're also special, because they're your family, your brothers, your sisters, your father, your mother, your relatives. And so there's a special identity in that. They some are more special than others because you're related to them. And so that reinforces your own sense of specialness. So this is how the ego's constructed our illusion of a reality, to confirm specialness is true and real. And yet we can transcend that. So the transformed relationship, we call a wholly aware relationship. holy relationship is the relationship that's been given over to the Spirit. You're using it for the purposes of awakening. So you're saying, well, my only purpose of this is to experience this unconditional love together. So I see you as me. I'm willing to share my experience with you and willing for you to come and feel me. And any relationship can be that. You can start doing this with all your so-called special relationships, then you're on the fast track to enlightenment.
Well, is this then, in this group, have we got a holy relationship then? Because this is what we're doing. We're working on this together, aren't we? So would that be called a holy relationship?
Sharing. No. Any relationship where there's sharing from the true source. We're not trying to be separate selves. We're not trying to defend our egos. We're not playing special games. I'm better than you. I'm competing with you. I see you as different, separate from me. There's an awareness that we're one. There's one mind here, just awakening in its seemingly different forms. We're all on the same journey. We're in the same boat, on the same journey, going to the same destination. And there's a love there, isn't there? There's an unconditional love and respect there. I see you. You're my brother on the journey. We're mighty companions. To coin a phrase, we're mighty companions together on the same journey, awakening together. And there's a sense of unity in that, and camaraderie, and like, well, your success is my success. I wouldn't, all I want is the best for you. I want you to awaken, because your awakening is my awakening. The faster you awaken, the faster I awaken. There's no, who's going to get there first? And it's like we stimulate each other's awakening. And you realize you don't get there without your brothers. Everyone's got to go there. And it's the fastest way to undo guilt. Which brings us to the next point. So maybe read the next sentence, because in the forgiving of our brothers and sisters.
Because in the forgiving of our brothers and sisters for their apparent sins, we also forgive our own, release ourselves from a struggle to overcome the idea of sin and its attendant guilt, which, if you watch the movie and the life and legacy of Martin Luther that I sent you a few weeks ago, you'll have seen was a major obstacle he faced and overcame through an experience of God's or love's grace. To have that experience, he had to wrestle with his belief in sin and guilt and intensely contemplate the meaning of this quote from Paul's letter to the Ephesians in the New Testament. For it is by grace you have been saved through faith, and this is not from yourselves. It is the gift of God, not by works, so that no one can boast.
And he didn't really understand that. He was so rooted in the Catholic tradition of guilt and sin. He felt this weight of guilt and sin, and he'd read this quote, and he'd read it, and then one night apparently he just sat with it, and he was like, I really want to understand this, and went the whole night, and eventually kind of broke through in the early hours of the morning to something different, and he saw it differently, and he realized the truth of what this is saying, that we are actually innocent. So by grace we're saved because that's the gift of God. And he framed it as, it's Jesus's gift. This is the gift of our Lord Jesus Christ, and because that was the way he could accept it. But it's really this presence that comes in and says, it doesn't matter what you do. You can't earn your way into heaven. It's not like you get brownie points and then, if you've done this and this and done a whole lot of good works, then you've accumulated so many credits and that kind of gets you in. That's totally egoic thinking. Not by works, it's by grace, by the beingness of what you really are, you saved. And so he understood then that he was innocent. There was a real breakthrough from him, that this innocence was actually there. This grace was always there, and he didn't actually need to do anything. I need do nothing. And for him, that was an absolute revelation. and that single mystic experience he had was the foundation of the rest of his life and all of his teachings. That's why he did what he did. And he wrote those 95 precepts, pinned them to the wall of the church at Wittenberg, and then that kicked off the whole Industrial Revolution. The whole Reformation, which in turn did lead to Industrial Revolution. That was the predecessor, the precursor for the transformation of society. And it came through the realization that I'm not guilty. I'm not a guilty sinner. He'd broken through into another domain in a mystic experience, and then all he could do was to teach that. He dedicated his life to teaching that, and his teaching led to this great Reformation out of the belief, because the Catholic Church was so rooted in guilt and sin, and they exploited that for financial gain, of saying, well, because you have this guilt and sin, but hang on, we've got a solution. You can buy your way to heaven. They had this system called indulgences. You could actually spend money, and then that would kind of get you into heaven. So it would get you out of the hell, and they used the fire and brimstone, and you're going to burn in hell to get people to pay money. And Martin Luther says, this is just totally wrong. Because what you're trying to do is mix two domains. You're trying to mix the spiritual with the commercial. He saw that as a complete distortion of the truth. So this epiphany or peak experience, maybe Sally, you read that.
This so-called epiphany or peak experience shaped Martin Luther's entire life from that moment onwards, and led to the Reformation movement in Europe, which in turn was the foundation for the Industrial Revolution and Western democracy. So one man's epiphany or peak experience in realizing there was a way out of the belief in sin and guilt in one night, 50 odd years ago, has profoundly 500 odd years ago, has profoundly changed the world ever since.
So you see the power of it. Like, he has a peak experience one night, internal, totally his own experience, but then he is inspired for the rest of his life to go and do what he did, and he kicks off a whole movement. He's the catalyst for this movement that transforms the world. I mean, Reformation led to the Renaissance, led to Industrial Revolution, led to Western democracy. It wouldn't have happened without that Reformation. It was necessary, based on an insight of truth. So you can see how the truth is then at the foundation of all these changes in the world, or anything that's positive. Those were movements that took us away from sin and guilt and into a more enlightened, the more enlightened, liberated consciousness, free of that. It was a spiritual realization, and it was based on these principles we're studying that led to all of that on the level of form. So the flatlanders who go, oh, well, this just kind of happened. I mean, it's just crazy. They don't acknowledge the causation is in the mind. All of this happened because the mind awoke to a different reality. And it often starts with one man as the catalyst, and then that spreads. He spread that awakening throughout Europe via the technology of the time, because they just invented the printing press so people could read. And now these ideas could expand their consciousness. And that was the foundation of, this movement, Reformation, Renaissance, Industrial Revolution. To deny the causation, the causation in mind, it's just crazy. So how do you account for those kinds of changes then? Who knows? It doesn't really make any sense to me. But somehow they try and justify it. And we see just how powerful a mystic or peak experience can be. This led him to do what he did, and he's gone down as one of the great teachers, great leaders of history, because he had that one experience that then inspired him to do what he did. So why can't we all do that? We're in another time of transformation. 500 years ago, everything was in turmoil. I think we're doing that again. It's like the current system is broken. So, okay, something else needs to unfold, and we all actors in that drama. So, will we listen and be inspired like he was, and step up, or not? And the answer is obvious. If you're alive and you understand this message, then you have a task. You have a responsibility to do this in this time and place, and that That's your purpose. That's your special function in this world. That's how you will come into the grace and the experience of grace and the flow that what you truly want. So you're doing it for yourself. It's your own journey of awakening at the same time as helping others to awaken. Okay, so it's hard to overestimate. The point is to overestimate the importance of such peak or grace experiences, because this completely changes your mindset. It changes your motivations. If it's a deep one, for the rest of your life, you've just changed in that moment, and so that's going to profoundly influence the course of the rest of your life. So there, I've included the movie again. If you didn't watch it a while ago, I'd recommend watching it. You see a story unfold, and the hero's journey right there. You see the hero's journey. You see the challenges, the trials, the temptations, but the grace that's it's helping him through all of it to do what he does and to stick to his convictions, despite the opposition of the ego to what the message he was teaching. Okay, and then if you haven't read this article, it's a really good article on signs you might be a mystic. Can recommend reading that. Just some more teaching, and there's actually there's a bonus video at the end of this, I think, which is also worth watching. Where's that? No, not down there, somewhere. There we go. Father Richard Rohr. So interesting guy, that sort of Christian mystic. So a lot of stuff you can go and explore in your own time to expand on this theme of a peak experience, a mystic experience. Okay, so any questions on that? Shall we move into our lesson?
No questions.
Yep. Happy to do the lesson. Okay, so let's do the lesson then. So
sorry, I'm going to have to go, John. I've got to go and sort things out with Eric. Thank you very much for all of that. It's been brilliant. It's all enlightening.
Right.
So thank you. I'll see you next
soon.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye. Okay, so God is only love, and therefore so am I. Same idea. This is the last day of the review lesson, so it's the last day we'll have it. That's the wrapper. So anything else come to you when you read that, when you read that today? Can you read it now?
God is only love, and therefore so am I. I feel like I'm getting more comfortable with it. I've printed it out and left it on my footstool in the middle of the lounge. So every time I walk past it, I look at it and read it. Nothing's coming up. A kind of disbelief, really, I suppose it's the only thing. It's like I read the words, I acknowledge it mentally. Work in progress.
Yeah, well, this is how it goes, So the mind training is like, okay, just knock on the door. If you think of a nice analogy is, how would you crack an enormous rock or stone? So like a big boulder, like the one that was used to cover the tomb. Enormous, like 10 foot high, 10 foot wide, massive stone. How would you crack that? Just with a hammer and a chisel? Well, if you just keep going, you keep cracking away. It might take 10,000 blows, but on the 10,000th one, there's going to be a crack in the rock that appears. And then if you keep going, it's gonna slowly crack. And if you kept at it for years, it might take years for such a size of a rock, you would crack it and it would just break down into little bits, and the whole huge block would be gone and be broken down into these little rocks and stones and dust. So in the same way, it's like, okay, we'll just keep every day. It's like you're dropping in mind training, and it comes up against some resistance maybe, so you're not fully getting that experience. It's actually a mind-blowing idea. God is only love, and therefore so am I. I am perfect love. Wow, Like, what does that actually feel like? But the ego is terrified of that feeling, so then it wants to try and keep us away from that feeling. So, but by practicing and inviting the feeling in through these words, that's all we're doing here. The words are the signposts to the experience. The more you do that, the more you invite it in, the more likely it is to happen. And so every day you get another opportunity with a different combination of words, a different pointer. That's the genius of this course. It's not just the same pointer, because he's like, well, that pointer might not quite do it for you, but tomorrow's pointer might be right on point, and it just takes you into the experience, and you go, wow, I get it. So that's why he's mixing it up. He's giving us these different words.
What do you feel when you read it?
God is only love, and therefore so am I. Just really happy. Happy. There's an underlying peace. You call it joy, maybe. Yeah, there's a sense of, it's like peace, but there's another quality to the peace. It's like, actually just, it makes you smile. You can't help but smile, so that's like a joy sort of arising up. Therefore, so am I. Okay, so this is who I really am. Wow.
Yeah, so I felt it as soon as you tuned into it. I felt it. I felt you feel it.
Did you? Good.
When I say it, I'm not feeling it.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
but it was good that I felt you. It was good that I saw you tune into it and I felt you feel it. That's one step closer.
Yeah. So then through another's, because it's really only one mind awakening, through another's experience, it can help you to experience the same thing. And that this is the sharing. So if we go into meditation, then we'll try and share the experience. Okay, I feel you, you feel me, because that'll probably help you go into that, into that experience of joy. Like, that's so nice. Just that open, expansive peace. There's a peace, but there's like oh wow, I can't help but smile. For there's no rational reason to it, is it? It's just like, well, it's just a feeling.
It's funny because every time you do it, I feel it.
Yeah.
So you've got to keep feeling it so I can feel it.
Yeah. So then we share our experience. That's how it goes. And this is the grace. By grace I live. That experience is the grace that actually is what's true life. By grace I live. You're not just existing in the ego as a body, some kind of mindless entity, thinking you're a body and trying to get some kind of satisfaction in the material world. It's by grace I live. This is the abundant life Yeshua called. You shall have life more abundantly. That's what he meant. Like this experience, that feeling that you just felt through me is the abundance of life. It's got nothing to do with anything on the level of form. But if you're in that experience, the level of form might then reflect it. It probably will reflect it. So then your experiences will tend to be more happier, more flowing, more connecting, more joyful, etc. So the external mirrors the internal, but primarily abundance is, it's internal. We all know that. And what is the abundance then? It's got nothing to do with money or anything material. It's a feeling. It's an experience. Grace. Okay, I experienced that. Yes, I'm just in that moment. I'm happy. I'm peaceful. Everything's okay. It just feels really good. So that's grace. By grace I live. And this feeling, this grace will release you. By grace I am released from all the dark thoughts and emotions that cover that over.
And what's your definition of grace? If we were to try and put any words to it, how would you describe grace?
So I'd say grace is an opening into this other dimension. It's a feeling that transcends the sense of separation. Let's just have a look. I think I've put it in the glossary. Let's have a look at the terms. Grace. Yeah, there we go. So you want to read that? Grace, an experience of
resting in being or formless awareness, i.e., a taste of revelation of heaven given to us by its God or pure formless awareness itself. Not earned, and no action is required from the person experiencing it, but forgiveness and miracles prepare the mind to experience it. So an experience resting in pure formless awareness. Okay. Yeah.
So it goes beyond actions. It goes beyond miracles. The transformation of mind has already kind of occurred for grace to be experienced. You see, the miracles are okay. There's a block. Now you're going to let go of the block. So there's some forgiveness or letting go required. Grace is the state post that, where there's no block. You're just in the experience, which you could call revelation, but he has these different terms. So I think grace is more like a taste, a glimpse of it. Revelation is like you really have dropped in. You've let go of the body and all sensory perception, and you're in oneness for maybe quite a sustained period of time, although that's not necessarily the case. But grace is like a little glimpse, and then revelation would be like grace would be, you use an analogy, grace would be like opening the door and having a little peek and the light shining. You go, wow, that's amazing. And then revelation would be like stepping through the door and now you're immersed in that light. And the other worlds disappeared. So it's a full on experience. You're just in state of revelation. There's no other awareness. Time and space have dropped away. Whereas with grace, you would still have maybe a sense that, okay, there's still some awareness of the body, surrounding environment, whatever. But wow, like I'm really feeling it. So that experience that you just had through me, that maybe you could call that grace. But it wasn't like, okay, the world just disappeared.
No.
But in that moment, when you're just aware of that, it kind of, you're not really aware of the body. Do you see what I mean? It just kind of drops away. You go into the experience and then now your awareness is rooted in that. And for those moments, you're not really aware of anything else. The sense perceptions just fade away. So although you didn't go into pure white light and the whole world just like totally disappeared, you were in that moment. You were just, I'm resting in that. And actually pretty much my whole consciousness is aware of just that experience. So that's grace. Subtle, but I think you see the difference between grace and revelation.
Yeah, definitely. So when you go into that state, what I experience is like my sacral chakra opening up, like just an opening. And I suspect the longer you stayed in it, and I was staying in it with you, it would be just like expansion. Yeah.
So then that might be the opening into a revelatory experience where you went, okay, I'm just actually going to go into, not consciously, but everything might just drop away. And you go into this very deep connected state where time space drops away and there's just this pure formless awareness and it's a sustained experience. So you could call that a revelation, but revelation is quite unusual because, like, as I understand it, everything disappears. Everything. You're not aware of any sense perceptions anymore. It's like your mind has almost left the body. Kind of like a near-death experience. And you're just in that domain of, the pure formless awareness with no awareness of the body. So there's some of these, deep mystics like Ramana Maharshi and others who've meditated for thousands and thousands of hours. They go into these deep states and they really just check out of the body. Their consciousness is not actually there anymore. They're in they're in heaven. They're in such bliss that the body is really unimportant. Kind of left it behind. There's a transcendence. So the body's sitting there and might be getting bitten by insects. So the joke was with Ramana, his followers had to clean the insects off him because they would just be crawling all over him and like eating his flesh and stuff. And he's not even bothered. It's not like he's so checked out of the body that it's not worrying him at all. He's in the super conscious state of revelation. So grace is just an opening into that, at the start of that, I would say, like opening the door and taking a peek. But it's, it's still pretty amazing compared with the ego. It feels really freeing and releasing and amazing.
So this is interesting. So now when I say God is only love and therefore so am I can tap into the feeling that I felt through you. So now I've taken on that feeling.
Great. So that's what the words are about. Because intellectually, you go, God is only, okay, it becomes a bit kind of, well, okay, the same idea. Where do I go with the intellect with that idea? Okay, conceptually, I can try and understand it, but it's just all in the mind. I'm not really feeling it. Grace is a felt experience. So, yeah, it's going into the feeling of it. And then the words come alive. And it's like, oh, wow, the words are pointing me to this amazing experience. But they're just pointers. They're just signposts to facilitate that experience. The words are in themselves unimportant. So it's that experience. If you can use the words to experience, then you're doing this workbook and the whole course, but particularly the workbook, because he's using these words as pointers, isn't he? Like very direct, just a short sentence as a pointer to another words to drop me into the experience. And you can do that just quite quickly. That's why he's doing say it says do the short practice periods. Just drop into it. So why can't you just go have that experience, 30 seconds, wow, drop into it, okay, carry on with my day. But I've just had a little moment of ecstasy, ecstatic experience, a mystic experience in that 30 seconds, which kind of tops me up, connects me with source. And then I go, okay, well, I can't necessarily, if I'm operating in the world, necessarily stay in that, because it's very hard to stay in that level of connection and joy, but it's the underlying base. It's then like, okay, well, that's kind of going with me all the time. And then again, periodically you pause and you drop into it again. So it's a really good, the structure of his course. You go, okay, well, I understand what he's trying to do here. Just frequent interrupting the pattern of the ego, dropping into the deeper experience, feeling it, and you keep topping yourself up through the day. So do a deeper experience in the morning, so you really connect with it. That's the longer practice. And then during the day, just keep topping yourself up to keep you in that connected to the source, so you don't disconnect and go out of it. And then again, evening comes, okay, deeper experience again. So deep dive, shallow dive, deep dive, shallow dive. But you're always diving into this deeper experience. And that's mysticism in action. That's how you become a mystic practically in the world. Just keep practicing something like this. It's going to take you more and more into these really profound experiences. And we just experience the power then of what we've talked about, the holy relationship. Like if two people join into that field, then they will both experience it. Even though we're hundreds of miles apart, it doesn't matter. It could be thousands of miles, it doesn't matter, because it's not bound by time and space at all. In the now, wherever you are, you can connect into the field. And it's like, two minds meeting as one and having that experience through the holy relationship. And he's saying that's the quickest way. He's saying your brothers can really help you to, have these experiences if you allow them to. So we'll experiment with that in the meditation. I think it'd be great. Okay, so let's just finish. There's no cruelty. Second idea for today.
There is no cruelty in God and none in me. Alternatively, there is no cruelty in perfect love and none in me.
Yeah, any thoughts on that?
It's easy not to recognize it in yourself. You don't realize you do little things to aren't really loving for yourself. You make choices that for the benefit of something else rather than yourself. Yeah, that's my only thought.
No cruelty and perfect love, and none in me. So in that experience, if you're really rooted in perfect love, how can there be cruelty? It's not possible. Pure formless awareness of perfect love can't conceive of cruelty. It's just not possible. There's just that awareness. How can that awareness be cruel? It just is what it is. It has no awareness of anyone separate. So how can it be cruel to itself or anyone else? Separation is required for cruelty to happen. See?
Okay, so I'm not being cruel to myself if I put other people's needs before my own, because they are me and we're all one. There's cruelty doesn't exist. Okay, yeah.
Can't happen. Even if someone is trying to attack you and seemingly being cruel, your perfect love can override. So this just can't be. This isn't really possible. This is a result of a false idea that cannot be. And you stay rooted in your perfect love, in grace. That person can't touch you, even if they're attacking you physically. See, that was the message of the crucifixion. No, it's okay. So do your worst. Crucify the body. Doesn't matter. Because I'm so rooted in my perfect love that I remain there. I remain rooted in it throughout the experience. I think that was his experience in the crucifixion. I'm still rooted in my inner self, and no matter how much the temptation is to go into the body and sense perceptions, when that's happening to you, I think he maintained. He was like, I'm still in the presence. Even I'm on the cross. My body's dying. It doesn't matter. I'm still rooted in presence. The presence speaking through it. So, saying even in the most extreme temptation of cruelty, you can maintain your connection to perfect love. Reminding yourself that actually cruelty is impossible. It's not really possible. It's an impossible thought, an impossible dream. And although it seems to be, possible and real in this world, it's not. So it's a complete denial then of the ego's thought system, which will undo it. Totally letting go of this belief. You really got this. There is no cruelty. I mean, it's a major idea. No cruelty. The world is safe. There's nothing I need to fear. I'm not the victim of the world anymore. I don't need to suffer. I don't need to die. So major ideas, major awakening just in one idea. So this is saying if you mastered even one lesson, you fully embodied that, fully lived that, then you're enlightened. You really get, there is no cruelty in perfect love and none in me. That's full enlightenment right there. If you fully accept that and fully feel into that. Wow, there's just perfect love. No cruelty is possible. Oh, well, I mean, that's salvation, isn't it? That's awakening. No harm can come to me or anyone. There is no cruel God that's waiting to punish me. Okay, and I'll say that God is only love again and see how that feels.
God is only love, and therefore so am I. Yeah, I'm not tapped in as far as you are, but I can feel it.
It's really nice, just like an open, expansive. So Eckhart described joy as vibrantly alive peace. I quite like that description. Because it's kind of can you feel that? It's like there's an underlying peace, but there's something else. It's just like an upliftment from the peace. You feel it?
Yeah, it is different to peace. Yeah.
It's like peace is the base requirement. You can't really have the joy without the peace, can you? Because if you're not at peace, then your mind's inturbulated and it's not possible to experience the joy. But with the foundation of peace, I call that like authentic happiness, foundational happiness. You then can experience this something else, like there's like an upliftment from it. And that's joy. All coming from love. It's all love.
Mm. Isn't it interesting? It's one energy, but it has different variants. Different.
Well, we just experience what happens is we experience it differently in this world. That's all. It's actually the same presence, but because our mind is seemingly separated from it, we have different perspectives, different experiences of it. In the end, when there's no barriers anymore, all of that's been stripped away, it'll just be one whole complete experience that will be unchangeable. All of it in one. And like imagine that feeling like 100 times amplified, and it's forever. That never changes. We can't really. It's difficult to conceive of it. But that's heaven. Just a pure experience of absolute peace, love, joy, and you can't even describe it. Those words wouldn't be necessary. It just is the complete experience. But here it's like we have these variations because we seemingly separated. So it's like, oh well, more of the covering got taken off there. So then I experienced the joy coming through. I was less covered over. So a bigger crack then leads to bigger opening, leads to a different experience of it. So we experience it differently, even though it's the same light. It's a bit like sunlight's there, but now you have a perspective on it because you open the curtains and you see a little bit, and it's like shines through. Oh, that's not okay. But let's open all the curtains, and now it streams through. It's like radiant sunshine and then the clouds come in, and it's like okay, well now it's different because the light's somewhat obscured. It's a different pattern of light, but it's the same light. You see, it's just how we perceive it from our separated perspective seems to be different. But if you go beyond the clouds, then it's just one light. There's no difference. Just rays of this glorious light streaming through. So our job is to get beyond the clouds and beyond the curtains and everything that's obscuring it. Just go, okay, well, let me just open to the full experience of that. And grace is then giving you the glimpses. Grace, okay, you pull back the curtains, you see the light coming in. Oh, that's a nice expanded experience. I think this is what he means by grace. Revelation be okay, whoosh, I go beyond the curtains, I go beyond, there's nothing obscuring me, I'm totally immersed in the light. I'm like up, it's like I've just done a neo and I've flown up beyond the clouds and I'm just in that blue, perfectly blue sky with this light just streaming around me and I'm just bathing in it. That's revelation. So
wow.
Yeah.
Can we have a minute or two's break before the meditation?
Shall we see? Yeah, no problem. So take a 2-minute break and then let's come back and do the med, shall we? Recording half an hour, 40 minutes. Okay, I'll call you. Thanks. Chat to you soon. Okay. All right. Alrighty, so recording. Okay, so let's do a little meditation on today's lesson. So making yourself comfortable, sitting with your feet shoulder width apart, back straight, cup your hands in your lap, close your eyes. And start off by taking a nice deep breath in through the nose, so breathing in, noticing how the stomach rises and the chest rises and the subtle flow of air in through the nostrils, clenching the sphincter muscle, so you lock the energy in, draw the energy up your spine, into your heart center. Put one hand on your heart to connect with your heart space. And draw the energy all the way up into the crown of your head, just pausing at the top of the inhale. Smile. Feel that expanded awareness. Now scan your mind and notice any thoughts, any emotions, any sensations happening. Remind yourself that no matter what you seem to be experiencing, it feels at all limited, limiting, contracted. Say, God, He is only love. God is only love, and therefore, so am I. God is only love, and therefore, so am I. Let's try and drop into an experience of that. There's peace in that. Maybe there's a little bit more. There's feeling of ebullient joy. You smile and feel the joy rising in your mind and in your heart. And breathe in again. And breathe in this joyful presence to every pore of your body, every cell, every muscle, every part of your mind, every fiber of your being. Yes. In the joy. Give yourself permission to experience it fully. Drop into it. Feel the joy in me. Help you to experience the joy in you. Does it feel like underlying peace? Just a smooth, open, empty awareness. That's the foundation. But then something in that's vibrantly alive, as Eckhart Tolle calls it, vibrantly alive peace. And so you smile. You experience that vibrantly alive peace. And let that peace, that joy just arise in your mind. And everything else just gets blown away. So you notice any blocks to this awareness of vibrantly alive, peace, joy. Just observe them and be willing to let them go. They have no substance, no power to obscure the light of your source, the blue sky of your pure formless awareness, the light of your source streaming through it. They are just clouds, ephemeral, shifting, changing, patterns just going nowhere. Only purpose is to obscure truth of pure formless awareness, perfect love beyond. So just sink into that experience, the mystic experience, transcendent experience of grace, vibrantly alive peace. As you exhale, clouds leaving you, going, gone to the nothingness that it really is. Blow it all away. And let it all go. Say again, by grace, by love, by grace I am released. This grace, vibrantly alive peace and joy. The grace of God will release you. Grace I love, by grace I am released. So feel that grace. It's a felt experience. Grace of perfect love, say. God is only love. And therefore, so am I. And feel into those words. God is only love, and therefore so am I. And experience the joy that comes from deeply realizing what these words mean. Pointers to the grace of God. The experience of transcendent peace and love and joy. So allow yourself just to have an experience of that. Sink into that deeply. Breathing in and out through your nose. Observe the breath flowing into the nostrils and out of the nostrils. Create the present moment awareness in which we experience this grace. Now, remind yourself of the second review idea. You breathe in, there's no cruelty. No cruelty in God. And none in me. No cruelty in perfect love. Cruelty is not possible in perfect love. Cruelty and perfect love are antithetical. So many thoughts of cruelty, self, that's attack thoughts, fear, part of it, guilt, wanting to punish yourself or others, hurt, blame, suffering, sickness, death. These are all part of the cruel idea of separation from perfect love. So just let them all go. Blow them all away with the breeze of your breath to the nothingness they really are. Dark clouds leaving your awareness. Feel the love that lies beyond them. It's always been there, just obscured by these clouds. By saying God is only love. God is only love, therefore, so am I. God is only love, and therefore, so am I. Let that be an invitation to grace, a deeper experience of this love. Peace and the joy that go with it. Vibrantly alive peace. What Eckhart Tolle called joy. So just open yourself to that experience and let's share that experience. So my mind is your mind. Your mind is my mind. There's only one mind really experiencing this vibrantly alive peace, joy. So just give yourself over to that experience. Fully, wholly, completely. Drop into the experience for the next couple of minutes of deep contemplative silence. Nowhere else to go, nothing else to do, nothing else to think about. Just allow yourself to experience the peace of God, peace of love that passes all understanding for the next couple of minutes of deep silence. Any thoughts arise, just observe those thoughts. Some emotions arising, sensations. It's not perfect peace, vibrantly alive peace. You're willing to let it go to the nothingness it really is, blowing it away. So breathing in the light. Feel the vibrantly alive peace in every pore, every cell, every muscle of your body, every part of your mind. Invite this experience of grace in. By grace I live, and by grace I am released. So exhale on the truth of that, and use it to help you release. Exhale and just release to nothingness it really is. Pull the lower stomach into the spine. Expel the last remaining air out. Just rest for another minute or so. Deep sighs. Let go of everything. Nothing else to do. Need do nothing. Just experience the pure fullness of awareness of perfect love that you really are for next minute or so of deep silence. So just gently coming back. It's deep awareness into awareness of the body and the breath and the senses of the world. And on the count of three, open your eyes. So 1, just breathing in. Noticing the stomach rise and the chest rise and the subtle flow of air in through the nostrils. Notice again what you're feeling mentally, emotionally. Scan your mind. Anything that's out of accord with this deep peace, this vibrantly alive peace of just joy, just observe it and be willing to blow it away. Exhale and blow it away with the breeze of your breath to the nothingness that it really is. Pull the lower stomach into the spine and expel the last remaining air out. And just feel the weight in the count of 2, the weight of your body pressing down into the chair and your feet touching the ground. Notice what you're feeling with your hands and touching. Maybe there's a subtle taste in your mouth, a smell in your nose. Notice that as you breathe in. Notice what you're hearing. Notice all these things from this presence of pure formless awareness. No judgment, no interpretation, just open, empty, spacious awareness. This is the peace that underlies all of your sense perceptions. It will guide you through the rest of the afternoon and evening to live by grace. Say one more time as you exhale. By grace I live, by grace I am released. So there is no cruelty in God or perfect love, and none in me. Finally, God is only love, and therefore, so am I. So now on the count of 3, you're going to open your eyes. As usual, just take a minute to look around, observing the various objects in the room in this deeply peaceful way. You notice how it doesn't matter what you look at, it's the same awareness. Look at a lamp, look at a wall, a light switch, a table, a computer, it's all the same. Just one awareness that's perceiving it all. So stay rooted in that awareness this afternoon by frequently dropping into this lesson. She recommends every hour, just remind yourself of these ideas, 2 key ideas, and then the main idea, God is only love, and therefore so am I. Just start with each practice pure that and include it in between as well. So it's like a sandwich wrapper for the ideas, or listen to the breath break that I've sent you, 5-minute breath break, to help you to do that, and that will keep you in the love and the peace and the joy of God, living by grace. So, and that brings us to the end of the meditation and the session. So thanks for joining, Sally, and namaste. Okay, so my pleasure. And